And for more detail on the government's plans for this summer, I spoke to Emergency Services Minister Peter Ryan at Parliament House. Peter Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Will any bushfire refuges be built in time for this summer?
The Fire Services Commissioner now has the capacity to develop a pilot. He will go out and do that. And if that can be done by this summer, well and good. If others can be done by this summer, well and good. We'll just see as the process unfolds. The critical thing is, for the first time in Australia, we in Victoria have a policy which is supported by appropriate regulatory controls to enable these refuges to be built.
But part of those regulatory controls refer to a national building standard that won't be finished until late next year. Does that mean no building can take place until that's finished?
No, that's not so. We have amended our regulations. We did it on the 29th of July this year. The Building Commission has done that, and we have led the way in this. The federal government was very comfortable with our doing so, and they are intending to develop their regulations based around what we have done.
So there will be refuges being built in time for next summer, if not this summer?
Well, there's a capacity to do it now. We've got the regulatory changes made. We have the policy in place. People are free to go ahead and do it.
So how many do you anticipate will be needed across Victoria?
Look, I don't know that you can gauge that. It will depend on what each community wants to do. It's our role as a government to provide the capacity to do this. It's up to local government to make the designations as to where the refuges should be built. They have to do that in concert with the CFA and a variety of other measures that are associated with this. So it will be a matter for local communities as to whether they want to pursue this.
And why is it the responsibility of local councils, given that the Royal Commission recommended that the state actually control refuges?
Well, that is the state of the law at the moment. The Country Fire Authority Act provides for this, and so that's what the law says. That's what we're doing.
Are you buck passing?
Not at all. It's what the law says. It's what we're doing. I mean, the simple fact is the current provisions of legislation in the way that they are. Local government has a responsibility in this, but we will support them in enabling it to happen.
The Municipal Association of Victoria says it won't be recommending to local councils that they actually get involved with refuges until they have more detail on who will be responsible for operating them and who will be liable if something goes wrong.
Well, I'm surprised to hear them say that because, as they know, on the second point, the State of Victoria is going to provide a complete indemnity to the Municipal Association of Victoria and to any local government area that is involved in the construction of one of these facilities. They know that is the case. And as to whether their own communities are concerned to develop these facilities, well, that's a matter for them. I'd hope now with the framework in place that they do work with us and with the local communities to enable this to occur.
Who pays for them?
We have allocated $1.5 million up to that amount of money for the initial pilot, and we will see what eventuates after that and the extent of the demand. We're conscious, of course, of the pressures on local government. We don't want to add to that, but we will see as this further develops.
And in the policy, it refers to the owner of the land on which a refuge is built to having responsibility for maintaining the refuge and also developing a policy to operate it. Who are those owners?
Well, the owner will be whether it's built on public land in the sense of that owned by the State of Victoria, in which event it will be the government of the day. If it is local government, it will be local government's responsibility in the first instance. But I emphasise again, we're very conscious of the need to support local government in this, and we will.
How much do you think it will cost? $1.5 million for the pilot, but clearly that's not enough to build refuges across the state.
Well, it's not intended to be to build refuges across the state. As I said, what we're intending to do is to make that figure up to $1.5 million available for the construction of the pilot, and then we will take these various further initiatives as they go.
The Fire Services Commissioner has said that most refuges will be built to house about 30 people, but he's admitted that up to 100 could be needing to access any single refuge. What happens in that case?
Well, what will happen when we're building the refuges, we will have regard to the requirements and the likely demand. By definition, these will be built in pretty remote areas. The first advice to give to people is to leave, and to leave early. Don't treat these things as the get out when everything else fails, simply because people have failed to have a fire plan or have failed to leave when they've got the opportunity to do so. These are things that we'll see as we further develop the refuges, but the important thing is we've got a policy now. Inside 11 months, we developed a policy and the regulatory changes, and we delivered it. I'm proud we've done it. We're the first in Australia to do it.
But it won't be ready for this year, though, will it? I mean, we're approaching bushfire season and there aren't any refuges.
The pilot is now able to be built, and the Fire Services Commissioner will pursue that with the communities that are interested in having it happen.
But what do you, just back to that point, what do you anticipate will happen if 100 people do turn up to a refuge, as the Fire Services Commissioner is anticipating himself?
I anticipate that the dimensions of the respective refuges will vary from one community unto another. And so I also anticipate that the dimensions, the capacity of those refuges will be of sufficient to accommodate the needs of whatever the community might be.
And heading into this bushfire season, how many of the 52 high-risk communities across Victoria have a neighbourhood safer place?
There are now 195 neighbourhood safer places across the state.
But in those 52 high-risk?
As I was saying, there are 195 across the state. There are 64 areas of Victoria within the local government areas that are accommodated by the Country Fire Authority Act. 14 of those areas are without NSPs at the present time, but only about 5 of those are areas that have not been significantly flood affected. So we're continuing to work with them. We have a team working with the Fire Services Commissioner to achieve that outcome, and we will do it as soon as it can be done.
Peter Ryan, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
And in an update since that interview, there are now 198 neighbourhood safer places across Victoria.